Howdy my totally tubular gamers. We're back with another video. Let's get to it.
So game of the year. Game of the year. Everybody's favorite conversation. What was their game of the year? What was the best game they've played all year? And of course, what wins game of the year from the Game Awards, formerly known as Spike TV Game Awards. Now naturally, with something as subjective as video games, there's going to be a lot of different opinions on what the best game of a year was. Everybody's going to have their own unique answer, and the Game Awards is obviously just one publication, one outlet, but there's been plenty of times where a game is won and a lot of people have gone, I don't know if that should have been the winner, or I disagree with that. And then of course plenty of people go, I think this game was snubbed, I think this game should have won, etc, etc. And so that's what we're talking about today. We're going to be talking about 10 games that in my opinion were snubbed for Game of the Year. Now I'm not saying that the winners aren't incredible experiences and didn't deserve to win Game of the Year. No, I think for the most part every game that's won Game of the Year at the Game Awards and the Spike TV Game Awards has deserved Game of the Year, and they are some amazing games. These are just 10 games that I think either could have won or in some cases should have won. These really are the beta cucks that came in second place. And before we begin, I do want to mention that I'm not just going to be talking about the Game Awards by Geoff Keighley. I'm actually going to go a little further back and also bring up the Spike TV Game Awards because this happened way back when as well. This list is also not in any particular order. These aren't reviews, rankings, or anything of the sort, just sharing my thoughts, feelings, etc. You know how all of this goes. Please like, share, comment, subscribe. I got the Patreon and the super thanks. Any supports truly greatly appreciated. Seriously, thank you all so very much. Let's get to the games. Now, when I think of games that absolutely should have won Game of the Year that didn't, I think the first that comes to my mind and most people's mind is Red Dead Redemption 2. I still can't believe this game did not win Game of the Year in 2018. God of War 2018 won, and while I think God of War 2018 is a great game, it's not Red Dead Redemption 2. It's honestly kind of wild that Red Dead Redemption 2 was cucked out of Game of the Year, that it's just perpetually edging. Like, this is RDR2 we're talking about here, one of the most graphically impressive video games ever made. It also has one of the greatest stories of any game. The writing is so great, the characters are exceptionally well done, the attention to detail really is something else. The open world is pretty well done for the most part, the soundtrack is incredible, and the voice acting really is some of the greatest of any video game. Yeah, there are plenty of things that I don't really care for in Red Dead Redemption 2. I think the game goes on a little too long, I think the pacing suffers a little bit. I really got sick of just how much you have to traverse the open world and how long it takes. Really would have liked a better fast travel system, and the overall focus on realism can be a little annoying at times. But these are, for the most part, minor complaints. These aren't deal breakers, and I still would have no problem giving Red Dead Redemption 2 a 10 out of 10. I still think it's a masterpiece, I still think it's a legendary game, and genuinely, I think it's better than God of War 2018 by quite a bit. And this is coming from somebody who actually really enjoys the 2018 game also. I think that game's story is excellent. It's not Red Dead Redemption 2 though. Same goes for the writing, and when it comes to the gameplay, it's not even close. At the end of the day, both of these games are technological masterpieces, and they absolutely are both must-play titles, but I still think it's surprising to this day that RDR2 did not win Game of the Year. Like, how? So here's another one that was edged and didn't win Game of the Year, and this was in 2011 with Batman Arkham City. So in 2011, the Game of the Year winner was Skyrim, and obviously Skyrim is a phenomenal video game. It's been re-released several times, and it's one of the greatest games ever made. And I'm sure plenty of people would say that Skyrim was the right choice in 2011, not even close, but I love Batman Arkham City. I honestly love Arkham City more than Skyrim. Maybe that's a hot take. And I still, to this day, think that Arkham City could have won Game of the Year. I mean, this is Arkham City we're talking about here. If you've forgotten how good this game is, let me remind you. This is, like, easily the greatest superhero game ever made. No other game has been able to top Arkham City. A few other games have come close, like Spider-Man 2, but they're not Arkham City. Arkham City is also maybe the greatest licensed game of all time. Like, all these years later, I don't think any licensed game has ever been able to top Arkham City. Sure, it's not the giant open world with seemingly endless content in it, but it's still got a pretty great open world in its own right, and there's plenty of content as well. I think it has some excellent combat, some of the best the series has ever seen, and it has one of the greatest stories I've ever seen in a video game, and maybe the best story I feel like I've ever seen Batman in. They really continue things from Arkham Asylum, and the stakes just get higher and higher, and the story honestly just gets more and more impressive with one of the craziest endings to any superhero game. For the time, the game looked really great. The soundtrack is actually really kick-ass in this game, like this shit bussin'. And on top of this, there were genuine improvements made over Arkham Asylum. The boss fights are like 10 times better, the combat flows better, and the open world is just way more fleshed out. I really love Arkham City. I've played through this game multiple times. And yeah, I absolutely have played through Skyrim multiple times and may even have more time on Skyrim than Arkham City, but hey, I absolutely think this could have still been Game of the Year. Like, I think it was Game of the Year for a lot of people, myself included, and I was always like, I can't believe it didn't win Game of the Year. But this is Skyrim we're talking about after all. But who knows, maybe this entire entry is just a Jonathan hot take. You can let me know down below. Arkham City or Skyrim? Ooh. And so here we have Bayonetta 2, which I think should have won Game of the Year in 2014. 2014's Game of the Year winner was Dragon Age Inquisition, and looking back at all of the Game of the Year winners from the Game Awards outside of Overwatch 1, I think Dragon Age Inquisition is like the weakest one. And I remember being just kind of perplexed that it won Game of the Year even back in 2014. Like, Dragon Age Inquisition is still a good game, but I don't think it's Game of the Year for 2014 or even one of the best BioWare games. It never hit for me like Mass Effect did. I remember Bayonetta 2 was nominated, along with Dark Souls 2, Hearthstone, and Middle-earth: Shadow of Mordor, and while I don't really have anything to say about Hearthstone, I thought the 3 other games were honestly better than what Dragon Age Inquisition was doing. There were plenty of other games in 2014 that weren't even nominated that I thought were better, like Smash for Wii U or Mario Kart 8, but out of what was nominated, I think Bayonetta 2 was like the best one here. I think that this is one of the best hack and slashes of not only the 2010s but of all time, and it's probably the best in the entire series. I think it's actually quite a bit better than the first game. They really improve on the game's aesthetic, tone, and overall combat, and I think it's better than Bayonetta 3 as well, and it low-key looks better than Bayonetta 3. The game still looks really good, it plays really well, there's a ton of depth here, like there is just an insane amount of depth when it comes to the combos, weapons, switching between them all, and then of course it depends on which enemy there is. The boss fights just go absolutely wild, and the game has just tons upon tons of amazing set pieces. The pacing is just perfection in this game when it comes to a hack and slash game. It is constantly mixing things up, there's tons of variety, it's always interesting, and it never even got close to getting stale, at least for me it didn't. While it's not super long, it's incredibly replayable, and it's just so much fun. Dragon Age Inquisition got plenty of good things about it, but Bayonetta 2, I mean, it's Bayonetta 2, this game rules. So here's an interesting one with Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. Now, this game was not nominated for Game of the Year in 2024 or 2025, but I'm absolutely bringing it up here because I think at the very least it should have been nominated. I guess it came out too late for the 2024 awards, but then it wasn't at the 2025 ones either, so it's just been totally snubbed here. And that really sucks. While I don't think it would have won Game of the Year, I think it absolutely deserves to be in the conversation, and it's basically not been in the conversation twice now. It had 2 chances and it was cucked both times. How does that even happen? Well, I think it's just more unfortunate timing than anything else. So I'll hype up the Great Circle for a hot second. This is easily the best Indiana Jones game ever made, and it's arguably the best game Machine Games has ever made, and they made some pretty kick-ass Wolfenstein games. It actually tells a really good story that very much plays into Indiana Jones. It actually feels like it could be a real Indiana Jones story. The writing is half decent here, and the performances are actually pretty good, especially Troy Baker as Indiana Jones, which he actually did get nominated for in the 2025 Game Awards, so they kind of remembered this game existed for like a second. So they absolutely nailed the writing, the story, the characters, and the plot, but when it comes to the gameplay, I think it's actually pretty good also. It plays more like an immersive sim than anything else, and it actually is pretty solid. The combat is more than serviceable, and it's some of the best brawler combat I've ever seen in a first-person game. It actually does feel pretty good. The occasional times you have guns feel decent also, and of course whipping everything is great. Everything you do with the whip is great in this game. It's maybe the greatest whip in any video game, which, you know, you'd kind of expect from an Indiana Jones game. I also really enjoyed the level design. It's rather open and you actually can do a lot of things in these levels. The side quests are pretty decent here, like they actually have a fair amount of story to them. There's a few different ways you can go about a lot of them, and there's even a bunch of throwbacks to other Indiana Jones media. The game through and through was actually pretty good. It looked nice, it played nice, it had a good story, like it totally should be in the conversation for best game of the year, and it gets to be in neither conversation, which is just more unfortunate than anything else. And the last thing that I want to bring up is it's pretty wild that we have an Indiana Jones game that plays absolutely nothing like Tomb Raider or Uncharted. Like, I don't think anybody expected that. And speaking of Uncharted, we have Uncharted 4: A Thief's End in 2016. Now, the 2016 Game of the Year winner was Overwatch. If you had asked me in 2016 what my favorite game was, I'd probably tell you Overwatch also, because I think Overwatch was absolutely amazing. Nowadays though, oh hell no, I'm gonna tell you Uncharted 4 or Doom should have won. Like, don't get it twisted, in 2016 Overwatch was absolutely the shit, but it was just in 2016. Overwatch has not had the lasting legacy that I think a lot of people thought it would, especially once Overwatch 2 came out. Overwatch is low-key one of the most mishandled franchises in the history of gaming. When it released, Overwatch was a damn near cultural phenomenon, but it hasn't been in the spotlight in years. You know what else hasn't been in the spotlight in years? Uncharted, but at least it didn't go out through the self-implosion of its publisher. No, Uncharted actually has an end to it. I mean, the game's subtitle is A Thief's End, and yeah, it has a pretty definitive ending to Nathan Drake and his story. Of course, there was the spin-off that came out a few years later that doesn't feature him at all, but that wasn't a mainline title. When it comes to Uncharted 4's overall story, I think it's one of the best the series has ever seen. I saw a lot of people saying it was pretty safe, but I actually really resonated with the story here, and I thought there were some nice decisions that helped it stand out from the other Uncharted games. When it comes to the core moment-to-moment gameplay, this is like easily the best of the Uncharted games. The shooting feels amazing, the parkour feels amazing, they threw in stealth in there, there's some more open areas, and I enjoyed all of this. I also think Uncharted 4 is like the best set pieces of the entire series. No, it doesn't have the train, no, it doesn't have the plane, and I'll just be real, nothing's as iconic as 2 or 3's, but some of the set pieces go absolutely bonkers in this game, like when you're on the bike, and were memorable in their own right. I also think the game's presentation is phenomenal. I think the voice acting is great, and it even had multiplayer that was pretty solid. And that's why I think looking back, yeah, Uncharted 4 absolutely could have won Game of the Year in 2016. That or Doom 2016. It would certainly be a lot more believable than Overwatch winning Game of the Year in 2016. A lot of people just totally forgot that happened. Low-key I did as well though. So the next game we have here is actually 2 games. We got a double creature feature with Hades and Doom Eternal, neither of which winning Game of the Year in 2020. In 2020, The Last of Us Part 2 won Game of the Year. Now, we could be here all day talking about Last of Us Part 2 and why I don't think it should have won Game of the Year, yada yada yada. That's not what today's video is about. Let's hype up Hades and Doom Eternal. I think both of these games are absolutely fantastic and are still some of the best games in their genre. Hades is low-key like the greatest roguelike ever made. It plays amazing. The controls are so fluid and fast, and it feels just really great to it, and it has some of the best combat you'll find in any roguelike period. The story is actually pretty good also. And then Doom Eternal was also a bit of a trendsetter in its genre as well. It's one of the fastest first-person shooters ever made. It's actually exhausting when played for long stretches of time. It looks really incredible. It feels really nice. It has some of the most satisfying kills of any video game. The weapons all feel just exceptional to use, and it makes you feel like a proper badass. I'm not going to sit here and act like Doom Eternal has a phenomenal story. I mean, I'll just say even Hades has a better story than Doom Eternal, but it was still an absolute kick-ass game, and I think either of these games could have won Game of the Year in 2020. But no, it was given to The Last of Us Part 2, which admittedly is more cinematic than both of these games, and it has some of the most shocking moments of any video game. It very much is that artistic Game of the Year kind of game, where it favors graphical fidelity, a little bit of spectacle, and the story / acting above everything else, versus the gameplay first focused Doom Eternal and Hades. And in my humble opinion, Hades and Doom Eternal are better than The Last of Us Part 2. And now that I've probably just set ablaze to the keyboard warriors in comments, I'm going to move on to the next game. And that next game is Psychonauts 2. Now, in 2021, It Takes Two won Game of the Year, and it very much was a feel-good story about Joseph and his team, and I love to see it. I absolutely love It Takes Two. I think it's a wonderful game. But Psychonauts 2, oh, this game hit so hard for me. And it was my personal Game of the Year, which was why I was a little bit surprised it didn't win Game of the Year. I thought it was a fantastic 3D platformer, an amazing sequel, and I think it has one of the best stories of any game in the 2020s. Like, the story is actually really good in Psychonauts 2. Surprisingly so, it very much is a sequel to the original game, and it continues the story, it introduces a bunch of new characters, it follows up on plot threads from the original game, and it actually has a pretty proper conclusion as well. I don't know if we'll ever get a Psychonauts 3, but I'm not holding my breath. I still think it's incredible that we actually got a Psychonauts 2 like 15, 16 years later, and then it was actually good. Like, how often does that actually happen? How often is it where a sequel gets made that much later outside of Wasteland? What I'm trying to say is I really enjoyed the story, the characters, and the plot in general. There's not a bad character here, and it was extremely memorable. As memorable as the original? I don't know, but it was still pretty good. And when it comes to the gameplay, it really was an extension on the original game, where you would go into people's minds and solve puzzles, interact with other characters, and of course do plenty of platforming. And the platforming is actually pretty good in this game. The game feels nice, it controls well, and it was incredibly responsive. The level design is actually pretty good in this game as well, and I think all of the levels are very different from each other. There's a lot of variety. Maybe not as much variety as the original game, but I still think what they had here was a really solid offering. I like how they also kept the structure of the original game where you can roam around in the real world, air quotes, and it's kind of like a semi-open area, but then of course the levels themselves when you're in people's brains are a lot more linear. I was worried they would change that, they didn't, and I really like that. And overall, it was just one of the most delightful experiences I've had in the 2020s, like straight up. I love It Takes Two. When it comes to cooperative games, I don't think it really gets any better outside of maybe Split Fiction, and the game just has an insane amount of variety, and it also is really imaginative. But so is Psychonauts 2. Psychonauts 2 is incredibly imaginative. It's not exactly innovative, but it has a bunch of fun new ideas, and it's certainly not a hot take to say that Psychonauts 2 is a much better story than It Takes Two. For how great It Takes Two is, it has a surprisingly lacking story, especially when you compare the two. I'm not saying that It Takes Two shouldn't have won, but I love Psychonauts 2, and that was my personal GOTY. Yeah. So this next entry is a bit of a strange one just because of how perplexing it is, and I just have all of 2003. See, in 2003, that was the first ever Spike Video Game Awards, hosted by Spike TV. This would eventually go on to become the Game Awards show with the most notoriety, and eventually became the Game Awards show that we know today. But in 2003, I don't know what the fuck they were smoking, because they said that Madden NFL 2004 was Game of the Year. I am not making this shit up. They went with a Madden game for Game of the Year. Now, I've never played Madden NFL 2004. Maybe it really is just an amazing game, but listen to what this game was up against. Back then, they didn't have a limit on how many nominees there could be. So it was up against Freedom Fighters, Grand Theft Auto Vice City, Legend of Zelda The Wind Waker, SOCOM 2, SSX 3, Star Wars Galaxies, Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, the original Splinter Cell, and Tony Hawk's Underground. I don't know about you, I'd rather play all of those games over Madden NFL 2004. I have no idea why Madden NFL 2004 was chosen over all of those. Really? Over Vice City? Over the Wind Waker? Over SSX 3? Over the OG Splinter Cell? Even Knights of the Old Republic? Shit, I'll even take Thug over that. It didn't make any sense then, and it certainly doesn't make any sense now, but hey, this event actually had a WWE tag team match with Rey Mysterio, Chris Jericho, Trish Stratus, and Victoria. Can't say that about any other Game Awards now, can ya? Well, Indiana Jones might have been snubbed out of the 2024 and 25 Game Awards, but I still think Balatro was low-key cucked out of winning Game of the Year. Balatro is just an amazing game. I may or may not have an addiction to it a year later, like I just love this game to pieces. I loved Astrobot, which was Game of the Year in 2024. Astrobot was so good, one of the best 3D platformers ever, really great attention to detail, but come on, we're talking about Balatro here. Balatro is unrivaled. It is like the greatest card game ever made. Balatro is crack, steroids, poker, and maybe even some solitaire in there. I mean, I love Balatro to pieces. I'm not even like a card game guy. I'm not the biggest roguelike guy either. And deck builder, I can probably count on one hand how many deck builder games I've played. And the best one is right here. Why would I need to play any more? I just love this game so much. If you haven't played it, you probably don't really get what I'm talking about, but if you have played it, oh, you know exactly what the hell I'm talking about. It's just one of the most addicting games ever. It's different every single time. There's so many builds, there's so many ways to win, and the game will let you go absolutely nuts and crack it wide open, and it is just such a good time. It is so much fun to just get these crazy combinations, and the game lets you get so creative. See, it's kind of like poker, but you get these jokers that basically add these wild variants to the entire game, and your playstyle can change like that. Like, it can go from 0 to 100 real quick, and the amount of different ways I've played this game is just astounding. You could put well over 100 hours into this and you'll still be finding new ways to play, and the game also has a bunch of challenges on top of just playing the game normally. Funny enough, while the Game Awards might not have given Balatro Game of the Year, a few other outlets such as GDC's Game Awards actually did, because it's Balatro, man. This game just rules. The end. If I haven't sold you on it, well, just look at how hypnotic this shit is. So yeah, I guess it got to me, the hypnosis has worked, and now I'm a simp for Balatro. And then the last game I'm bringing up here is Persona 5, which did not win Game of the Year in 2017. Breath of the Wild won Game of the Year in 2017. Now, Breath of the Wild, it was really the most realistic choice. It was the obvious pick here, and it was a huge moment for Nintendo. Shoot, I would say it was just a huge moment in gaming, as it kind of reinvented the wheel for open world games and player freedom. But Persona 5, man, this shit kind of brought the JRPG back. Don't get it twisted, there were plenty of JRPGs before and after, but in the late 2000s, early 2010s, mid 2010s even, there wasn't a lot of JRPGs until after Persona 5 and how successful Persona 5 was, and it's not hard to see why. Persona 5 is maybe the best JRPG of them all. And I'm sure I've angered somebody by saying that, so let me just say that I think the game has a wonderful story, amazing characters, some of the best menus of any video game, and it has arguably the best turn-based combat of like any game. It is essentially SMT's gameplay to perfection. Like, it is such a good time, and I love it to pieces. The soundtrack is incredible. It still looks pretty nice nowadays. It has a ton of content. I mean, it's one of the longest games of the 2010s. Like, what is there to not love about Persona 5? We could be here all day glazing the game. All I've been doing today is glazing games. So I will just say Persona 5, really good one. I absolutely could see it winning Game of the Year in 2017. I get why Breath of the Wild won. I understand why Breath of the Wild won, but I actually personally enjoy Persona 5 more than Breath of the Wild. To be honest, I enjoy Super Mario Odyssey more than Breath of the Wild. I've always preferred Mario to Zelda, and Odyssey was also nominated for Game of the Year, but hey, it makes sense why Breath of the Wild was that big game that won. Either way, we can all come together to say that there were some pretty amazing games released over the last decade or two, and all of the games I've talked about today are pretty great. So with that in mind, let me know down below what game you think should have won Game of the Year. Are you still pissed RDR2 did not win Game of the Year? Let me know. I'm ready to hear it. So I'll talk to y'all later. Bye-bye.